The adulation of Mormon pioneers by the Church and its members borders on idolatry and is akin to the veneration of saints practiced by the Catholic Church. A saint in the Catholic Church is a person who is deemed exceptionally holy, or as a Latter-day Saint might put it, righteous. When canonized, saints become officially recognized as worthy of veneration. Though the Church has no official process of canonization, it has officially recognized the holiness of the pioneers through the inclusion of hymns to and about the pioneers in its hymnal. In Hymn 36, They the Builders of the Nation, the pioneers are described in the same terms as canonized saints. The pioneers are adored, blessed, revered, and venerated. This hymn, when sung by congregations in worship services, becomes a form of veneration of the dead, a practice common in religions throughout the world. The hymns, we must remember, are forms of prayer. They are songs of the heart and a prayer unto God. They, the Builders of the Nation, is explicitly a song of adoration addressed to the pioneers. It is a musical prayer where blessed, honored pioneer has replaced Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Church members are taught from primary age to adulthood the virtues of the pioneers and encouraged to emulate them. Members are to become modern pioneers. Becoming a modern pioneer is more than an act of imitation. Members are counseled to identify the eternal principles used by the original pioneers and apply them in their lives.
Are these pioneer celebrations academic, merely increasing our fund of experiences and knowledge, or will they have a profound impact on how we live our lives? This question applies to all of us. As President Hinckley reminded us last April, whether you are among the posterity of the pioneers or whether you were baptized only yesterday, each is the beneficiary of their great undertaking. All of us enjoy the blessings of their efforts, and all of us have the responsibilities which go with that heritage. It is not enough to study or reenact the accomplishments of our pioneers. We need to identify the great eternal principles they applied to achieve all they achieved for our benefit, and to apply those principles to the challenges of our day.
In essence, the eternal principles of the pioneers become the religion of our day. The faith of the fathers is now the bedrock of today's holy faith. The problem, unfortunately, is that as in the case of the Lamanite, the faith of the fathers does not necessarily make it the truth, let alone the gospel of Jesus Christ. The revelations of the Doctrine and Covenants make it very clear that it was those who traveled across the plains, those who would become pioneers, were not faithful to the commandments of God. They could not or would not abide by their covenants. For example, the law of consecration was suspended and replaced by the law of tithing due to disobedience. In 1834, the Lord explained to Joseph Smith that he had allowed the saints to be driven out of Jackson County by the mobs due to the saints' iniquity and disobedience. In the same revelation, the Lord did make a promise. He would help the saints prevail against their enemies starting immediately. The promise was conditional. If the saints were obedient, they would prevail against the kingdoms of the world. If they were not obedient, the kingdoms of the world would prevail against them. Under the instructions of the Lord in the Revelation, Joseph Smith formed an army which would be called Zion's Camp. Zion's Camp ultimately failed due to the transgressions of the saints, primarily with respect to the law of consecration. The Lord postponed the redemption of Zion so that the saints would more perfectly learn and perform the duties required of them. The Church has repeatedly tried to cast Zion's camp in a favorable light. But the fact is that the saints failed due to transgression, and Zion has not been redeemed even to this day. The reason the early saints became pioneers in the first place is because they failed to redeem Zion as commanded by the Lord.